to Kessel Run Collecting, a place for fans of 3 3/4 inch action figures, playsets, and more. And now, here are your hosts, Eric and Rezakai.
Hey, listeners, we're back. How's it going, Matt?
Oh, it's been going great, man. How's it going, guys?
It's been a while because we had that one episode we recorded and none of the audio was any good. So
I feel bad. I love talking to Jake James and his collection.
Yeah, we'll get him back on. Well, with us tonight we have Chris Saylor from Empire Toy Works. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you were probably like in our top 2 or 3 people that we said when we want to start doing interviews, we got to get him on.
Oh, great. No, I love the channel. I actually discovered it, I don't know, probably about maybe a year and a half ago. And I've listened to it. I think I've listened to all the episodes. And it's just kind of cool to have, like-minded dudes in your ear while you're working on stuff at the same time,
Well, it's awesome because we have a very small audience. You're like probably one of about 20 people, I think, that subscribe. But yeah, that's always really cool when someone else you admire, actually admires the work you do. So that's really great.
Awesome. Yeah, because on
one
of your earlier episodes, I'm just listening to it, painting on something. And then you guys had mentioned, Rock Gut Station and that I had, built it and take pictures of it and all that. And it was just kind of cool, hearing your own name drop, in an episode.
Yeah, I've probably and Matt too, we've probably both followed your work for probably almost like 3 or 4 years at least.
At least. I think I first learned about you back on the imperialshipyards.net.
Okay, yeah.
Stuff there. Yeah. And I don't think you had actually done up the walls of the upper attic yet. You were just had the actual station at that point.
Yeah, it was probably pretty early in the whole process, more than likely, because that's around the time that I had first started posting pictures on Rebel Scum and Yojo. It's not Yojo. It's the
His Tank.
His Tank, yeah, it was His Tank and Rebel Scum were the 2 main ones that I had initially started, posting stuff. And then I think shortly after that is when I was like, I might as well just make a Facebook, page just for it, and then just see where it goes, from there.
So now, when you got into this, was it a matter of you just said, hey, you know what, I want to start making and selling dioramas, or was this something where you made a couple things for yourself and then people asked you, hey, where can I buy that?
That's pretty much the case right there is me always making stuff, usually in wood. I'd started out like as a kid doing stuff in cardboard. And then since I had a background with woodworking and I had tons of scrap wood that I could use, it just made it so much easier to not actually have a whole lot of money invested in something that was just a little piddly, hobby on the side. And I didn't think anything of it. I built, I don't know, probably hundreds of buildings and forms and structures, and I didn't think anything of them. I probably chunked, most of them over the years, prior to, moving into this house and then deciding, what, I'm going to build a city-sized playset and see what happens. And then once I, showed the initial shots of it, that's when folks started, sending me messages saying, hey, you ought to start making these and selling them. And I didn't really do anything with eBay. I've been on eBay, like a registered member since like 98 or something like that, or 97 thereabouts. And, not long after they had first started. And it was, I wasn't selling anything regularly on eBay, just piddly stuff here and there. And then I realized, well, I could just make my own, product line essentially. And then maybe see if I can make a little side business. And then that eventually became like a full-time, at-home business.
Oh, so that's your full-time job now?
Oh, yeah. For the past, probably going on 5 years.
Oh, congratulations.
Do it as a full-time one-man operation. Because it's funny because I get a lot of guys, sometimes they'll send me messages and they'll ask me like, "Oh, how many's on your team?" And, "Hey, are you guys going to go to this, convention in Belgium and this?" And I'm like, dude, I'm just in my garage, just I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just like piddling around. So yeah, it's just me.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
I'm about 5 years now where, I actually started my business back in 2005, but for years I was doing it along with my day job, and slowly things just cycled to the point where I was making more doing the side job than the main job. And, I've been about 8 years now where, this has been full time, this kind of stuff. It's great. It's great working for yourself. So what was your background before that? You said you had like a woodworking background?
Yeah, because I mean, I dabbled over the years, like as like a freelance artist, doing like comic book type art stuff. For a short
Really?
while, I worked in animation.
But both Matt and I are into comic fans, and I actually have
Oh, great! Yeah.
I actually have a comic book that I've written, and my partner and I on that. I mean, we're always looking for artists too. So
Yeah. But no, I mean, I know how to draw. I just literally haven't actually drawn in years for the most part, other than just doing stuff for the play sets and all. But I think having a background in art in some form or fashion, you're able to pull from those resources of just having an eye for style or just setting up a shot that you realize that you can actually use it in so many other little, aspects of, like, especially dioramas, miniatures, things like that.
Hey, Matt, I'm getting some background noise.
Oh, my bad. I was speaking of which, I love your posters and all your miniature work, like not just the dioramas, but the extra details, which I assume the art background helps with that, where you're putting posters and you're putting little readouts at Rocket Station. Like I've poured over those pictures meticulously to figure all that out. And also, I love the fact that you find the toy store. You made a toy store in the actual station.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was a definite. Yeah.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, I just want to throw that out there.
Are you guys seeing the photos I'm sharing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I see them.
Right there?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm sharing the screen, as soon as I go back into StreamYards, I'm seeing that into infinity look. Yeah, this is amazing, and the thing I love about it is with this station is the world building. You have all these little details on everything, which I think is one of those things where it's a delicate balance to hit. It's kind of like weathering on something. There's people that go to weather it,
right,
and it's way too much. And then you also have the sometimes you don't have enough. And I think you really do a good job of striking that balance where, in the city, every little back alley has detail to it. So
yeah, I mean, because you don't realize, like, when you're especially like and a lot of people don't have the ability, because they don't have the history of making like multiple building sets and keeping them, so that you can arrange them actually as a city setting. They might make one diorama building and then sell it or take some shots and then destroy it or use the parts and then go to the next. But when you actually start making something that's going to become multiple structures, you don't realize, like, just the relation between the buildings, that it ends up giving you a whole new wave of ideas of what would fit there. Would it be some sort of generator unit on the side of a building, or like what I usually call like atomic air conditioners, something that just it's just set dressing. It's probably a cardboard box on film, but just the design of it, when you see it on screen, it looks clunky and it looks heavy and it looks like something that would look really cool, making something similar to it, inspired by it, like for these buildings.
Now, what kind of wood do you use? Because it has a certain look to it, which made me think it was MDF, but I thought I saw some photos where it looked like it was just plywood.
Yeah. Well, all right. So to finish the history of like my kind of background, and this leads into what you're asking now is, so I did like freelance cartooning and like some artwork and stuff, nothing big, but just here and there. And it was fun, but it's trying to find like a steady gig in that kind of environment. And we have a family business where my dad had started this company where we made custom staircases. So that was easy money, steady job. I can't really get fired. I'm the boss's son, so it kind of works out pretty good. And so, I did that for many years, kind of in the construction industry. But for the most part, I would drive, and this was for years, I would drive to all these different job sites. And I would go out, look at the house plans. The house would only be usually partially completed. And then my job was to go in there and take these measurements to see what would actually fit, and kind of merge all these things together. What's on paper? What do the homeowners want? What does the builder actually, what is he actually willing to install? And then, what they can afford. And I take all those elements and then look at the plans and try to design a staircase that would fit in that area. And all I did was just come back to the shop and drop off my drawings and measurements, and then they would, make them. And then I would go on to the next wave of houses, So over the course of, I don't even know how many years, 15, 20 years, I probably went into thousands of houses and looked at thousands of house plans. And I always thought that was like just the biggest waste of my life doing that. But I realized that it actually, I think it trained my brain to think spatially and three-dimensionally. So even though I had never drawn any kind of designs or house plans or any kind of specs for Rock Gut Station, I think just seeing that many house plans and walls, and then how the relationship of a corner next to an angled clip in something, how it all kind of jives. So I think a lot of what I thought was wasted time was me just kind of preparing myself for what I was going to build with, Rock Gut Station. Just in miniature for the most part.
It was time well spent, my friend. Time well
Thank
spent.
you. Thank you.
How long do you think it took you to build it, or did you just kind of have like a building and then you made another building and then incorporate the two together?
Right. Yeah. So that's pretty much what it was I was still working, for the family business. And then on the weekends I would go in, and one day I just said, you know what, my kids had this, I've got two boys. And at the time, this was probably about 10 years ago. And they were right at that age where they just start getting interested in actual action figures. And I was like, I was still collecting. I've been collecting since really I was a kid and all. So I had tons that they could actually play with. And I figured, now's the time. I've got two boys that they'd love to have like an actual play table type thing. And they had this Thomas the Tank Engine, type table that they weren't doing anything with anymore. So I realized that could be the base. And then it makes it so much easier when you already have something that you could build right onto. You're at a clean slate kind of a thing. And so I went to the wood shop and I knocked out like one building. And it's essentially everything I do. If you know how to build a birdhouse, that's pretty much what I'm doing. I'm just changing out walls and making it so that it accommodates, action figures. But I just made essentially what's an elongated, kind of tall rectangular box that was, opened with like 3 levels to it. And I made sure it had like a landing platform on top to get kind of these like Blade Runner rooftop vibes. And I built that first building, and that's the main hotel, like toward the center of the station. So I built that first, and that's when I initially wanted to make a city. I knew and I always think of these things sort of like shopping malls, where when you get to a shopping mall, you usually have to walk around or between like the anchor stores, like the JCPenney, the Sears, all the Belks or something, Tallheimers, whatever it might be, in Macy's. You got these big main stores that are kind of the anchors, the corners of the shopping mall. So I figured if I did something along those lines on this play table and knocked out the larger, bigger, open, expansive building first, then that way I can kind of see what's jiving between them. Can I get another little, another little shop on top of it, maybe a chain of shops, wrapping around? So once you kind of knock out the big thing, and it's sort of like decorating a living room. Get the couch and the TV stand and all that in there first, and then see what you can start hanging on the walls and putting over in the corners.
Wow, this is a really good shot.
It's
right
intricate
here.
as heck. I love when you started adding in LEDs to it. I remember early posts on Rebel Scum talking about how you were swapping from, was it LED strips to tap lights, or was it the other way around?
It was the fairy lights. You can get them. They're just strips, and they had like a string of fairy lights on them, little teardrop or honeydew or something like that lights, and that's what they look like, is water on a string essentially, and it's an LED bulb. And I got like 20 of these packs, and these things were like 6 feet, 8 feet long or something, and I was learning really quickly that you can't really cut those to size because you're basically pumping what initially was going to be 50 bulbs off of a few AA batteries, and you clip it down to size to fit the building, that you're blowing out these bulbs, because you're giving all the juice to like three bulbs in a 12-inch span. So I learned quickly that it was and initially when I built the city, I was like, I'm not going to light it. Now I'm just going to have it. I'm not going to get so crazy with it. I'm just going to have it so that the kids can get their hands in there, and it's going to be cool. But the more I built, the darker it got, because it was casting shadows over top. So then I did the battery lights. That worked out okay for a while, and then I realized I was going through like 3 packs of batteries each week because the kids would leave the lights on, and it wasn't working out. And then also, if you wanted to cut the city on, I was having to go through and switch on like 13 different rooms, to get all the lights on. So it was just a pain. And then that's when I realized, I'm just going to run power right to it, and just make the whole thing, powered by one switch. It's all LED, so it's not really draining anything. And
Now
and it works.
That was actually something I wanted to ask about that. You already answered the question about having it on one switch, but how do you provide enough power? Because I've noticed with some of the dioramas that I've lit, I've had a problem where I'll have, say, 20 lights, and I have a sufficient battery, but some of the lights won't light up bright enough. It's like it's not distributing the power properly. How do you get around that?
Well, that was I think the main reason that it pushed me away from the battery lights, because I knew that this was going to be like essentially part of the house. So I wasn't so afraid of drilling holes and using larger cables also, because it actually worked out better for the city, since it is sort of like a Blade Runner theme. And if you look at the buildings in Blade Runner, you'll see that they actually what looks like large cable covers, the cable tubing, the corrugated looking ribbed cable tubing. So you see a lot of those details. So I realized there's a lot of real life items that I could use to kind of accentuate all the cables and the cords to the city. And that's when I realized with plug-in LEDs is that basically, as long as you've got a power source, I haven't had any drain. And I'll be honest with you, the hookup is probably not the safest, but it's literally just a chain of several power strips. So there's a bundle of these IKEA diode or LED sets that are spread all over each pocket of the city. So each essentially with the IKEA dioder sets, I think that you get 5 puck lights in each set, and I don't even know if they still make those dioder sets, but they used to have them. And,
they do.
And they're super thin, and that's what I was looking for, was something that looked like it always reminded me of like a 70s sci-fi kitchen ceiling light, where it's like just kind of a wide circular dome.
Is this what we're seeing in this? Is that what we're seeing in this photo? There's 3 along the top.
Yeah, that's probably it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. But yeah, you can find variations of them, like some of the Chinese sellers on Amazon. You can find the Chinese versions of them, and I've bought several of those sets also, and they work just as good. I haven't had a light like a puck light go out yet, and that's been 10 years of me probably turning the city on, daily.
So that's mainly what's inside. Like you look inside a shop and it's lit up. It's one of those puck lights inside.
That's it, yeah. Because that way,
Oh,
and also
okay.
you learn quickly what colors work well for interiors. Well, especially like it works the same way in real life. You know, if you have a bedroom, a living room, whatever, and you want to light it and give it a different mood, you'll notice that you get different lighting effects depending on the way that the light is reflecting off that color that you want to put on the walls. So when you're doing it in miniature, it's even more important because you know you got such a tiny little area, maybe 6 by 6 inches, of depth. So there's not a whole lot going there. So really only one light is all it really takes and as long as you have sort of a neutral kind of a gray color for the interior of that room, then you can kind of have that light bounce around to really give you a full illuminated appearance on it. But I mean, I could have gone with much tinier bulbs if I wanted to give it like even a more, kind of a darker, dreary look, almost like a dungeon type setting. Yeah, that's another option that could be done. But I've just found it to be so much easier just to buy regular plug and play lights, and this way I'm not having to worry about, splicing anything or doing any soldering. Even though I have done a ton of soldering to do certain lights for Rot Gut, it just makes it a little bit easier, especially if it's, like I said, part of the house. It's like a permanent structure now. If they're individual little vignettes, like diorama vignettes that you light up, then it totally makes more sense to do the battery option. But I just don't have enough experience with that kind of stuff.
Still looks great, man.
Thank you.
No problem. I remember. I love hearing the lore of how you brought it together too, because I remember you might remember this back on Rebel Scum like 4 or 5 years ago when you first started posting.
Yeah,
you posted that picture in your it's in a warehouse or your workshop, and it's just like stacks and stacks of wood.
yeah.
That's
that's the family. That's the shop. Yeah, we still have it. It's still in the family. It's just that another company's operating out of it. So while I was there, and even after, my dad decided to retire, and I had absolutely no reason or motivation to want to take it over a business that I just didn't like the building industry anymore, And I knew that if I didn't take the chance to at least try to become a toy maker to some level, that I would always regret it, So I didn't want to be, and I could have made a lot of money, taking over the family business, but it just didn't jive with me anymore. I just didn't like it. I just wanted to go in a different direction, and my dad totally understood, so it was all cool. And the good thing about it was that it still took a while for another company to come in to kind of take over, as a different business. So I had a lot of time to still use a lot of that leftover scrap wood that we had. So the crazy thing about it, as big as Rot Gut is, and it's in an area that's about 10 feet by 10 feet. That's essentially the footprint of the area of it. And it really only takes up like 1/4 of the playroom that I have it in. And I remember, building it and knocking it out so that I finished one building, go back to the shop, build another building, get it started while and I would set it in relation to the previous building to kind of see, am I making these too big? Can I make this one kind of L-shaped to provide me an alley for later on? I didn't do any designing. So it really, when I tell people that I let it build itself, that's really essentially what it was like, was just, worry about one building and then kind of drift over to the next and then the next. And then that way, as I'm moving along, it's shaping itself, as I'm going. I think I would have lost steam in the start of the whole process if I was just trying to design it from the start, and I kind of like the surprise of seeing what it actually looks like in the end, and I know it's different for a lot of like diorama builders or even artists, where you have artists that they're really good at freehand drawing, and they excel at it. They're great, but then you have other artists that are just as equally good at being able to have some sort of form, a human, a portrait or something that they can, draw that still life exact, So it's really one's not better than the other. It's just different approaches to whatever you're trying to make, art or some big giant playset.
I know.
What I think is really interesting is you're right. It's not as big as it appears in a lot of the photos because you're getting close up and everything, but it's really deceptive on the size because the thing looks absolutely enormous, and I think it's because of that little detail you have that you can photograph it from so many different angles, and you have all these little things that unless you get close up to hit it, you can't really tell it's there. And so I think it really, I mean, that's one thing I got to give you is, you're not just a good diorama builder, but you're good at the toy photography too.
And see, and that's the weird thing to me, because I never sought out to even get into toy photography. I loved looking at it. Like years ago, I was just mesmerized by it, but I never got into cameras. I mean, I just always drew stuff, little characters and stuff. And I never had any inkling to want to lean into taking toy photography. And then when I realized, when I started making this city, and I was like, well, I'd like to show somebody and see, what somebody thinks. I'm sure there's other like 40-something-year-old dudes out there that play with toys still. So I'm sure that I'll knock on some doors and get, to look this way. And it just blew up, So then I realized, well, if I'm selling stuff on eBay, I don't want to take pictures of my stuff as if it's just sitting on a table, because that's what people do when they're selling like socks or something. I wanted it to look like, give people the illusion of when they eyeball it, squint one eye and kind of crouch down to do an action shot, that this is what it's going to look like. This is what the building is going to provide you if you light it a certain way. But I never studied photography. I never got into like a lighting or anything like that. People keep saying that my lighting looks amazing, but I'm using like Walmart desk lights, and just masking it off, or bouncing it off of something. And I don't know what the shot's going to look like in many cases. I don't really plan them out. So sometimes I'll set up a shot and I'll just see what is it going to look like if I cut out all the lights in the room except for just one nearby. And you get weird effects if you just kind of, experiment with it.
Yeah, I like there. We're looking at the Stormtrooper shot with all your mini buildings. Now this is not part of Rocket we're looking at. This is actually one of your eBay listings, right? Or just
yeah. Usually on the eBay stuff, if I have anything that's like more of like an outdoor type thing, like a building or a satellite tower, gun tower, or something like that, then usually I'll walk about 20 feet out of the playroom onto my balcony, and we have like sort of this weird it's almost like a bar top type thing on the balcony, and it's almost like a flat like a flower pedestal type weird thing, and it's maybe about 3 feet by 3 feet square. And I realized that it works really well because there's a white wall behind it, so that way I have a very neutral background that I can go take the picture and then immediately go onto an app and just basically hand draw in a sky onto it. And then this way it gives whatever little building that I'm, trying to hawk on eBay, that this way they can see that this is what it would look like in a more realistic, lifelike setting.
That's great. I love all these buildings. And the one time I was looking for them on eBay, and I don't think you actually had any up for sale. And so I was just perusing dioramas. I think I might have even forgotten what the name you were using on eBay. And I came across one, and this guy had a number of them. And you could tell he was trying to imitate your style. Like, he even had like a little poster or two. It wasn't executed anywhere as good as yours, but I could tell just looking at it. I'm like, this guy was inspired by Empire Toy Works. He's obviously trying to go for the same sort of like standalone building type thing like this.
Right. Yeah. And honestly, people ask me all the time, they're like, look, you gotta look at this guy on eBay. He's copying you. He's doing this. And then, next week it's another guy or something. And it's like, I understand why some people would be, they would feel kind of miffed by it, but at the same time, I'm like, whoever this guy is, he got off his ass and he actually made something, and I'm like, I love it. I mean, if I inspired somebody, I didn't set out to do that. It's just they liked what they saw, and they're taking it in their direction. So whenever anybody tells me that they're starting to make like their own city in their basement or bonus room or something, I think it's amazing, because like in my mind, I always thought it would be kind of cool that there's sort of like this backwoods of space, alleyway of the galaxy, where there's these roadside attractions, and basically every one of these fans that decided to build their own city, that essentially we're all linked in some sort of make-believe highway, a network, a travel hub kind of a thing. And they're all like just little outposts and truck stops, kind of a scenario. I love that idea.
Well, it's absolutely true. And that's even kind of made me stray outside the limit I had, where it was like, I'm getting Star Wars figures, I'm not getting all this other stuff. But
yeah,
seeing how you've incorporated so many different things, I thought, wouldn't it be cool, to get some robots that aren't from Star Wars, like Twiggy from Battlestar or whatever. Hey, that fits. And then, hey, wouldn't it be kind of funny if in this corner, is Tron's light cycle or whatever. So I've actually started accumulating lines that normally I wouldn't have gotten, because at some point I'd love to do something like this where you incorporate everything.
And that's the thing. Because in my mind, as fans, we're, and I always say this, we are aware of Star Wars and Star Trek and all this, and we're able to go to conventions that are literally a quilt of virtually every fandom you can imagine, and they're all located in one spot. And if you name drop any of these franchises, everybody is aware of what it is. But a lot of times, toy collectors, in many cases, especially when they're doing like dioramas, if they're linking them together, they'll go strictly Star Wars in it, but it has to be like this time period and this and this. And I totally get it, because that's a passion to get, because you want to get it right, But at the same time, if I'm a fan of all of these universes, what would it be like if I created something that they could all visit, They don't have to take it over, but it gives me the option that it could be all Imperial run, or it could be all Cylons, or it could be, Ewoks, whatever it is, or Ferengi. It gives you the ability to not. It's easier when you have especially like a city that's very sort of blurred line, sort of neutral, because it does jive with like stuff you might see in an episode of like Farscape or Star Trek, where they go on an away team and they're on leave for a weekend at this one dirty, truck stop, space station. And to me, it promotes more creativity, for the fan and whoever's playing with the toys, because this way they don't feel that they have to recreate certain scenes and nothing else exists beyond, those scenes. I kind of want to be able to have Luke go to like the red light district of this place, and and just have these different characters. There's bound to be other adventures that are left open for us, the fans, to kind of do our thing, in between them.
Well, there is something to be said for not being too precious about some of that stuff, because I know, my wife and I moved 3 years ago, and I have more room for my collection than what I did. However, I'm still like struggling for space. And so, I made a list of some of the dioramas I want to make. Okay, I want to make this, I want to make this, but I prefer to do it accurately scaled as much as possible.
Right.
And so like one I determined was the War Room on Yavin, and really about the only reason I wanted to do the War Room on Yavin was one of the parts I sell is the War Table from Yavin. And so I said, okay, well...
Oh, yeah. Which looks beautiful, by the way.
Thank you.
Absolutely amazing.
So I thought, okay, I'm pretty much a room with a bunch of computers on the side and maybe some stone on the corner. Fairly straightforward. And then I figured out how big that would actually be as the diorama. And I'm like, that would take up like an entire shelf, just doing a bunch of people sitting around computers. So if you do something where you say, I'm just going to kind of not necessarily replicate a scene from the movie or a set from the movie, if you stop being so precious about it, it sometimes will let you say, okay, well, now I can work within the confines of my space, because I want to put, a command center of some point, and I can fit it here, and I can't fit
Right.
something screen accurate in there. So why can't I just, it doesn't have to be on the Death Star. It's just an Imperial command center. And
Right. Exactly.
so
And like you mentioned, like an Imperial type setting, that's the great thing about it is if you just take because I love box shelves and all the shelf, like little compartment cubby type things that you see around Rock Gut, those are all like plywood, build. Oh, and when you were asking me about the wood, usually I use like cabinet grade plywood. So it's or clear grade plywood. I would never have bought it, but we had scraps of it, there at the workshop. So I just used all of it because it was just going to get chunked anyway. But the funny thing is that I guess a lot of people think that I've spent so much money on Rock Gut, as big as it is. But honestly, I guess it would be like a green project if you like an environmentally conscious project, because it's all scrap wood that would have been, just chunked. So I guess that's a good thing too, is, it's recycling, I suppose, being green. But
that's one of the best feelings, man. When you get to not spend a lot of money and get a great diorama, because I do it myself too. Oh, it's cool. I love that feeling. Like I did all this with almost nothing. One of the accomplishments.
And because you're not. It's not a situation where it's like I have to go to the store and purchase this item, this one specific part. Can I use something that's in the junk drawer in the kitchen? Will that work just as well, if not better? So a lot of times out of desperation, I've found the nearest, the thing right beside me to work out really well for certain, little doodads that I'm putting together. But yeah, get back to those box shelves. Like if I'm a firm believer that if you just get like a box shelf, like a wooden shelf, that they make them so that you just hang them on right there on the wall. There's your little isolated cubby. And if you think of these things like TV studio sets, or movie sets, where there is no necessarily like a top, a ceiling to it. It's just whatever's camera level that works for the scene. You can easily, within a small box, essentially about the size of a shoebox, you could have a scene that really gives the heart of whatever that iconic moment, is, without going over the top, with all the intricacies. Because that's the great thing about with dioramas and play sets, is that you could kind of take it as far to exact as you want, or as ludicrous, as you want to. And if you look at, guys that make like more of like professionally screen used dioramas, they're very fragile, but the detail is just jaw dropping. It's just mesmerizing. You could stare at one building for an entire day and see new details on it. But then you see like what Kenner and Hasbro, usually put out, and it's like a hollow plastic base with a cardboard backdrop, kind of a thing. But sometimes, like the blockade runner hallway, that looks amazing. I haven't gotten one myself yet, but it looks amazing. And if you kind of straddle the line between what works in a toy box type thing versus, what works on screen, if you kind of, walk the line between that and make it play friendly, but as detailed as you can do it without it like falling apart when somebody sneezes, that's kind of the sweet spot. And then the same with like scale and sizing. I know a lot of guys that really have a hard time with the ships not being like exactly 1/18 scale and all that, but there's no way that Hasbro would be able to produce these things and sell them and as big as they would need to be, if they were true 1/18 scale. You got to like fudge some things to make it look good but work at the same time.
Oh, very much agreed. Like and you were talking about the Hasbro stuff. Like have you seen have you had any opinions on the Hasbro stuff yet? Like they've got like 3 play sets and
the Navarro Cantina bar, that was one, right? That was mentioned that's coming out.
Yep, that one. The as the aforementioned 10 of 4, and then the Jabba the Hutt one from a couple years ago.
Oh yeah.
I was wondering.
I think it's definitely a neat idea to have the stuff so that they're modular. That I absolutely loved, because and what they have is essentially facades. It's a backdrop with I don't think it has a floor or anything like that. It's just a backdrop and the wall panels, right, on either side. I think it is.
Yeah, on the Java and the Catino. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I mean, for what they are, I mean, to me, I mean, yeah, they could always be more, but for what it is, it to me, it still jives with what Kenner had put out. You know, of course, I always want them to make something huge. Everybody wants that, you know, like a full, you know, Jabba's palace kind of thing. Even if that was modular, you could build it section by section. Those kind of things would be amazing. But I totally get why a company would have a hard time going bigger with stuff. With being able to stock them on the shelves and stock them in the warehouse and the logistics. I totally get that. And that's why it kind of pushed me like, hey, I want to build a building. What do I need to do? I just need to build a building and just do it and keep going and see what happens.
Yeah, no, I've in some of your pictures of Rocket, like, and just to throw this back in here for no reason because we've already passed that situation. But I love your shared universe idea for Rocket, where all the different franchises are together, like having fun at the station, like the Buck Rogers stuff. And I saw where you actually had you acquired a barge and you've customized it to be like a party barge, or whatever it is. Yes, I love that. Man, I love custom. I am a poor man's customizer. Head swaps, occasionally a repaint I can do, but I can't go into all like the cutting apart the pieces and put them away like that.
Oh, I mean
that's Eric's department.
But no, totally. I mean, a lot of people think that there's like a big. There's sort of like they think that there's a threshold of toy customizing that they have to, I guess, approach before they can call themselves toy customizers. And I'm always telling people, just pop some heads off some stuff and glue them onto the other guy and swap things. To me, there was, even when I didn't know anything about painting, I was scared to super glue stuff together, even though I did a lot of it as a kid and all. It's just going to your toy bin of all the random figures. And there's sort of like this secret Rubik's Cube combination that's hidden within that bundle of action figures that's going to make a really cool figure. If you take the boots off this guy and then the jacket off that one and the head from this alien and you pop it all together and it becomes like this really cool, unintended, beautiful figure that you've literally customized. And it's coming from like 7 different toy manufacturers, but it works really, really well for what you want. And that's, to me, that's toy customizing. If you can pull it off and it looks good, you know, good photography makes things look even better, you know, so it's all presentation, you know, with it. And I've gotten ideas from tons of guys that literally look like they just pulled out a flip phone and just took a snapshot on their dusty bedroom dresser of some figure that they cobbled together. And I'm like, it's a shitty shot, but damn, that's a really great idea. I love it. And it's just seeing that there's so many different levels of creativity. Even when people don't think that they have it in them, they do. They just have to find that one niche that works, you know, for what they like.
I love this picture right here. This is what I love with some of the photography you do is you're telling stories, just these little tiny stories.
Yes.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Which I think is so cool.
Because I noticed a lot of guys, I think they stress out. They think that they have to have like an action shot, and to me, it's those sort of calm moments that you don't know if something's getting ready to happen or something already did happen. And these guys have seen some shit. They don't know what's going on. What's going to happen next. But it looks like they've been through something, you know. And it's just those little emotional. That's why I love Blade Runner so much, because a lot of people just fall asleep through it, but I just absorb all of that dark melancholy in a sci-fi setting. I'd absolutely just feed off that. And to me, when I was a kid, I think the whole hodgepodge interwoven universe thing, I remember doing that as a kid, where I would watch like Battlestar Galactica and Buck Rogers and, you know, Star Trek, and they would come on at weird hours in the afternoons and all. And then if you still stayed there watching TV, then like Sanford and Son would come on, and then like Alice or any of these great like 70s, 80s TV shows. And in my mind, I wanted to still be watching some sort of sci-fi like Buck Rogers. So I just kind of imagined that like on Sanford and Son, that they were aliens. It was a beautiful alien family that they went around the galaxy and picked up scrap and came back, and they had like all kinds of antics. And then you go to like the alien waitress, you know, and it shows her day-to-day life raising a alien daughter, you know, doing whatever in cosmetology school or whatever. And so I just kind of went with it as a kid. I just kind of put filters over top of just everyday things and just kind of turned it sci-fi, turned it alien. And that gave me more ideas, especially with Rock Gut, is like, don't focus on these key moments that most like diorama guys, they dive right into the heavy iconic scenes that you have to really spend a lot of time on to get it, climactic, that very moment. And sometimes it's just kind of cool to just have like a gritty alley, or a diner, and just what happens there. Maybe there's a spice deal going down, or somebody needs transportation, or somebody sold somebody some poisoned fish, or whatever it is. Those little, it kind of opens up for you to be able to have a ton of other adventures that don't necessarily revolve around like Jedi.
That was me too. Like when I was growing up, for some reason here in my state, my city, my town, they replayed the Road Warrior over and over again on Saturday afternoons.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. Yeah. And
That's
I had
awesome.
a bunch of, it was the heavily edited version, but like, it was like, I mean, it was like, I was like 7, 8, but I love the idea of all these like people fighting each other while they're driving this convoy of cars, they fighting each other. Right. And that's when my G.I. Joe and Star Wars teamed up, because they were just now part of the Mad Max universe, and they're fighting each other as the
and the great thing is you had the dreadnoughts, which were definitely straight out of Mad Max, So I had the exact same type setup with the very post-apocalyptic G.I. Joe. There's military, there's wars going on, and then that's when like Acid Rain, that action figure line came out, and that it was all those childhood feelings I think I had of where I would make my own little Mad Max kind of a post-apocalyptic gas mask kind of dude. And Acid Rain pops up out of nowhere, and then it is post-apocalyptic G.I. Joe, kind of a toy line. So I fell in love with it from the get-go.
Well, they're very articulated for one, like they have the double knee joints and stuff. But and you were saying how people think you spent a lot more on Rot Gut than you did. I can almost guarantee you, with the price of the Acid Rain figures, you have more money in those than you do in the station.
Yeah. And the cool thing is, the Toys Alliance started sending me their toys. Like I get free toys from them. This was one of those things that you never think it's going to happen when you become like a toy maker, that people are going to send you toy companies that I've never heard of, and they send me cool stuff, and it floors me because I never know what's going to show up. People send me like donations. I call it like Rocket Station donations, and if people have junk toys, I can't promise that I'm going to immediately have a photo, shoot in featuring it. But in many cases, I'll be able to use it into the city in some form or fashion with either like some sort of street beggar in the background, or it's going to be like a vending machine or a robot or something. And when Acid Rain, when Toys Alliance and Kit Loud, they contacted me and they started sending me the toys, I thought it was the best thing, and that I didn't have to spend money on Acid Rain anymore. But then I realized I'm actually buying more Acid Rain now, even after they've sent me free stuff. It's because I like it so much that I have to have like 3 of this guy and 5 of him. And
is that what this is from?
Two of the
spike? The spike I have up here?
Oh man.
Yeah. That's the Carbonara, I think it is. Capybara. Yeah. It's sort of the Akira. It's sort of the nod toward Akira with that one bite.
That's what I thought of immediately. Now, the little porta potty, I've seen that in a bunch of the photos. Is that a store-bought thing? It almost looks like it.
Yeah, and you can still get it, and sometimes you can find it in different colors.
What was it for? Was it actually supposed to be a porta potty?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, it's Playmobil.
Oh, okay. That's funny that they actually made something like that.
I had the sets. I probably had more Playmobil sets than I did like Lego or building block sets. And I remember that they always had these great, very close to 3 3/4 inch scale type tools and knickknacks and accessories. And I remember looking around one day and I was like, I'd love to have, like, we're the only toilets on Rock Gut Station, this intergalactic spaceport, all they have are like porta-johns. I just thought that was a great idea. And this way I didn't have to actually sculpt the toilet. So when I looked around online, sure enough, Playmobil has them. And you can usually, the great thing is Playmobil has like a company I'm sorry, a store, an online store where you can buy the parts and pieces individually, and so it's almost like Lego. And if you look on there, you can actually buy, the porta potties. And I think for a while they were all green, and then they actually have some that are in certain sets that are like blue and maybe an orange, or also. But they scale really, really well, and that was the reason why I recently finally got the Playmobil Enterprise.
Oh yeah, I
okay.
saw that. Yeah, that was great.
I saw a picture with a bunch of Imperial officers. That was the Playmobil one.
Yeah. So I just wanted to show, because that's the big thing with a lot of these toy companies. They, in many cases, they don't ask me to feature their toy if I'm doing a photo shoot. And like I said, they don't ask me for anything. They just send it to me, and then I'll just figure out something with a toy, shot, like a handful of photos or something. But in most cases, like especially with Toys Alliance, they don't like want me to only focus on just them. They tell me, just mix it in with everything else, like show it intermingling with these other toy lines, because I think that they feel the same way, that even though they do have like a definite compartmentalized toy line that's in and of itself a whole, it works really well when you're able to have GI Joe collectors buy a figure, Star Wars guys buy a figure, all these different toy collectors. You can incorporate these other figures into it. It doesn't have to be your favorite line, but it could be where you can fill in the gaps of something that you want to, keep growing.
Exactly.
In whatever you're doing. If you want to do like a Federation, like a Star Trek themed thing where they're smugglers in a Star Trek, world, then you need some smugglers. You're not going to be able to find any any Star Trek figures out of uniform. They're pretty much all in uniform, and there's slim pickings with like 3 3/4 inch. You got a few. Big Bang, you got those, but if you really want to have something within that universe that's not necessarily right in the Federation, locked in, then you have to get kind of creative with it, and you can have a ship run by maybe Ferengi, or some Klingon outcast or something. I just love these ideas of storylines that happen between the main storylines that we see on TV and the movies. There's stuff that's going on in the background. I always love those.
Yeah, it was a marketing strategy back in the 80s, once 3 3/4 really blew up as the main scale. Like there's not there's a reason why Mego and Hasbro all cut their lines to 3 3/4 as well. And then I still give Chet May money. Like I bought some of their stuff from Walmart.
Oh, they have good stuff. Yeah, and they were great with my boys, because I didn't want them messing up my GI Joes and my Star Wars ships. But I didn't really give a shit. I didn't give a shit what they did the Chet May stuff or the Leonard stuff. So that's why I gave them those to beat up. And damned if those toys, they survived my 2 boys. So it worked out pretty well. And so I'm able to incorporate a lot of those, like what I call Boba Toys. The ones you buy at Walmart, the ones you get at the drugstore, that they have them there. They work really well. They're built for the most part pretty good,
Yep. I agree. I mean, it's odd that I know the scale 3 3/4 is some say 3 3/4 is no longer the main scale around anymore. It's now like the 6-inch for everything, which to my personal taste, that's a tragedy. Hopefully, do you collect any 6-inch, Chris? Or
I only have like a handful of 6-inch, and the only reason I got them was they were maybe on clearance, or I was coming out with some new item that it could work with like a 6-inch scale. An item I would call like a dual scale item. So that way it technically could work with 3 3/4. It can work with 6-inch. It's just sort of like some sort of set dressing prop that still works with either scale. And so I just bought whatever figures, like a few Star Wars, some of the GI Joe classifieds. And that way I have something that I can kind of show the 6-inch collectors that, hey, it does work for your line also.
Well, I've had a lot of people when I come out with a new product, there's always at least one guy, on Facebook or whatever.
Always. I get it too.
That goes frowny face. This isn't for 6-inch. And I always tell those people, I'm like, go to my 6-inch page, buy everything there, and I'll make more 6-inch. But the simple fact is, people aren't buying the diorama stuff. And I know other toy photographers that say, well, 6-inch, the extra detail and posability, it films so much better. And I'm like, but you just can't do the world building. Like, could you imagine how big Rock Gut
Yeah,
Station
no.
would be if it was
Oh,
6-inch?
And people have told me that, if only Rock Gut was 6-inch, and I'm like, I literally, it would fit in this room, but it would take up the entire room, and that's the thing that I think a lot of people don't realize when you're making dioramas. And this is something I just kind of like stumbled across in myself, is that the smaller in scale you go, the more you can kind of fudge the proportions, especially of a building. You don't have to be so exact. The smaller you go, because look at tabletop miniatures. They all look kind of like chunky, squatty, chunky. They look good, and I get a ton of like inspiration from seeing the tabletop miniatures, the terrains. I think they're amazing. I just wish that they were scaled, up, for 1/18. But seeing that kind of stuff, the different props, whatever it might be, a bed, a couch, a table, something that the items you don't think about, but really make a room just with a handful of items. Boom, there's your diorama. And when people start building in certain scales, it seems that they want to jump right to the hard end and go with like the 6-inch, the 12-inch, the 1/12, the 1/6, and they realize that the building starts getting kind of mushy. Like it doesn't look like, it looks very condensed and concentrated for a figure that scale. Everything multiplies. So it's not just like going from a 4-inch figure to a 6-inch that's only 2 inches. It's really not that easy. The door really has to expand up and out, and the building, to get it so it actually looks like a building and not an outhouse for a 6-inch figure, is the same thing. It has to go out and up, and the depth has to change just to get the proportions right for it to look like an actual comfortable type dwelling for a person to enter, and I tell people, like, look at Barbie dream houses. Whenever they came out with the Barbie house, you notice that they're very vertical. They're not wide. They're more just straight up and down to fit Barbie, because that's the shape that she is. They just make this skinny. It's essentially like the dream tower for the most part, because it's just it's taller than it is wide. So that's the weird thing about it. And if I did any of my buildings that I usually always make in like 3 3¾ type scale, it would be too big for me to even bother, because I like to do free shipping, because I don't like to pay for shipping. But the price would everything would multiply. The weight, the size of the box, literally everything gets bombarded with having to get bigger. And to me, it's just, I grew up with 3 3/4. That was like my first action figures were right in there with like the Micronauts and the pocket superheroes that they used to have. And these were and Fisher Price Adventure People. These were all just before Star Wars. So then when Star Wars blew up, I was right in there. I already had a bunch of figures already lined up to be part of the fun. And then it became the standard, and that's what I stuck with. But over the years, like through the 80s and 90s, I still collected all those like weird oddball, scales of like Laser Hawk, the Silverhawks, and Thundercats, and Tales from the Crypt Keeper, and you name it, all the oddball toy lines. I would try to get them, but my love was always going to be the standard 3 3/4 inch, because I know that Hasbro's not going to make, like, I don't know if they're ever going to make an actual spaceship scaled for 6-inch. They have the TIE Fighter, but everything else has been like a speeder, I believe, or the air speeder, the snow speeder. And I don't know if Star Wars has any spaceships that aren't going to be like ridiculously big. I don't know.
I don't think so. That's off the top of my head.
I mean,
I have seen one. I don't know if I know Matt is. Are you familiar with Izzy Mel?
Yeah, I've talked to him. Yeah.
Yeah, well, me and him are friends in real life too, and
okay, great, yeah.
And he had sent me photos. I don't know if he shared them online yet. He showed me photos. He's been doing a lot in scale to the 12-inch figures, like a cockpit for the Millennium Falcon and cockpit for an X-wing. He just did a TIE Fighter, And so the cockpit's huge to begin with, you know, to fit the
Right.
figure. But with the wings, the thing's got to be like 5 feet tall. It's enormous.
I've seen those pics. That's crazy what he's doing with that.
And I think that's the thing. The history I've had where for 20 years, all I did was day in, day out was measure constantly. So, and I would have to scale things out also, especially when I was designing stairs, the way that you have to do the math for it, even though it's like fourth grade arithmetic type thing, it's still something. Measuring a staircase, it wasn't something any builder wanted to tackle. They would build multi-million-dollar houses, but they were scared of dealing with the staircase, because if you don't get the math right from the beginning, the very first step, then all the rest of the steps are going to go, you know, it's going to be a train wreck. So I think I've always got in my mind when I see guys, you know, respond with, I only wish I would have bought it if it was only truly 1/18 scale. And then I immediately like start doing the calculations, and I realized it'd be ridiculous. You know, the size of these things, if you really, and it's on the Wikipedia page, you know, where you see the full length of what the Millennium Falcon would be. And I think 6 inches, like something like 12 feet, you know, in length or thereabouts. It's ginormous.
The size of your car.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just I get it. I mean, everybody wants something like that, but it's like I don't know if I think even and I say this, like even the big Millennium Falcon is too big for kids to fly around. You know, the Kidder one is amazing because it was lightweight, but it's very abbreviated and squished, but it worked for what it was at the time. The big Millennium Falcon, the Legacy one, and then the Smuggler was one recent one. They're amazing. I absolutely love it. I love the ship, but it is one of those that it's one of those set in place and play with. It's more play set than it is ship. You know what I mean?
And even that has a lot of the details really compressed on it.
Yeah,
even on
it
that.
does. And even with, like, I've never been one of those where I was really worried about if they got it exactly right, because I mean, in my mind, it could always be a different, you know, a different model, you know, off the assembly line kind of a thing, and you know, a variation of it. But yeah, I mean, for what it is, for what Hasbro has been making, I mean, I've been extremely happy with the detailing, the designs. There's always going to be like the engineering part of certain things that could always be better, but a lot of that is like with materials, you know, joints. Are the joints rubbery enough to rub against each other to provide friction, or are they going to be, you know, harder plastic that's going to be, you know, get looser over time? But then it's going to be more brittle. So there's always like give and takes with all of that different stuff. And I've always been a stickler for, like, you know, vehicles. If I could take the vehicle and flip it upside down and shake it, if it doesn't fall apart, then that's exactly the kind of spaceship I love as a toy, you know. And there's certain ships like the Legacy Falcon. If you try to flip it over, then all those parts go flying everywhere, and good luck, you know, getting them on eBay. But yeah, it's absolutely amazing that I think that they released it. And I bought the original large Falcon when it first came out when my kids were little. That was my excuse to my wife to be able to like spend the 175 or whatever it was then on it for the kids. And I got one for them, and then, you know, they played with it for a while, and then I think I saw and I think I ended up missing some parts and pieces on it. So then when the Smuggler's Run one came out, I was like, I really like that one too, you know, and I figured I'm just going to go ahead and find it and get it. And then it's, I hung the other one up on the wall in my workshop.
Now, I want to ask you some questions about some specific figures and stuff. So this one here, this Maximilian, he doesn't look like the original action figure.
Everything about him is the original except for the arms, because the original Mego, I think it was Mego that made, it just had like the kind of hard, brittle, like mirror finish silver arms that just went straight down.
So this is repainted then, and that's what really makes it look different, I think.
I think all I did with him was I just put a black wash on him, other than recreating his arms to make them articulated.
Oh, okay.
So that the Maximilian, the entire body except for the arms, is the actual, I believe, Mego version of it. And I realized I wanted him to have something kind of imposed, because otherwise his arms were literally stuck stationary straight down at his sides. So I figured, what if I could do something, make it articulated? But I mean, I wasn't going to sit there and carve out, 3 joints for his 3 arms on each, for his each shoulder. So I looked around, and then I realized, wait a second, those the Darth Vader surgical droids that they had. Remember the one with 3 legs, the
Yeah.
tripod surgical droid. All right, so I bought 2 of those. I think I already had one, so I got one extra, and I used the hip joint for each one of those, and that way it gave him what the legs ended up becoming his arms. So then I took that, and I think I added like another piece or something, and then something to the ends of them to make them look like they were each one had a tool, like a pincer and a knife blade and like a zapper or something. So yeah, that one took a little while to come because it was so intricate, detailed right at that one spot. But this way, each arm is able to pivot at the socket and then pop out, each of the 3 sub arms that are right there.
That's really nice. I really like
But
that,
yeah,
and I love the little R2 unit.
Yeah, because there's a guy that I don't know who did it. Somebody had there's a Photoshop picture that somebody had done of a Maximilian inspired astromech.
Yeah,
And,
I've seen it.
Yeah, and I was like, that's a great idea for a custom figure. So that's when I was like, let me see if I can knock one of these out. And I just took one of my astromechs, and that's actually the astromech I think from the droid. No, the it's from the one of the cartoon lines. Not Rebels. It was the
Clone Wars,
Resistance,
right?
It was Clone. Yeah, it was Clone Wars because it's the one that has the string. It's got the grappling hook inside of them.
Oh, Goldie.
Stuff. It might have been.
Goldie.
It might have been a Goldie, I think, or one of the. Maybe it was the black one. Yeah, Goldie had the black body, right?
yeah, Black
kinda-
Gold.
kind of
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. Yeah, that's right.
I
Yeah.
think that was it.
He was black.
Because I think I wanted to use a dark bodied for him in case that I couldn't get the body, just in case the paint didn't come out. I can go back and scuff it to make it look intentional that the paint is chipping or something. So I went with a black base, for the astromech itself.
Now,
But
what kind
he's
of
got a
paints
lot
do
of
you
little
use?
bits and pieces on. Usually just spray paint and just acrylic paint. Nothing special. Like
Yeah,
literally,
I found the problem
my
with
supply
acrylic.
run-
I found the
Yeah.
problem with acrylic is it tends to be a little thick, so it's like it's very easy to scuff and just pull right off.
Oh,
Like
yeah,
I'm curious
definitely.
I'm curious what they use at the factories, because that
I
paint
don't know if this
obviously
is-
really sticks.
Oh, definitely. But the story I've always heard, and I don't know if this is 100% true, but it makes sense to me, is that the paint that's mainly used on action figures and has been for decades is extremely toxic
I'm
in
sure.
its liquefied form. As soon
Yeah.
as the paint cures, it's inert. It's safe. You can stick in your mouth. Nothing's going to happen. But it's toxic in its liquid state, and that supposedly is why it's not necessarily available to the regular consumer. This is like basically like a factory type chemical. That's what I've heard about it, and because I've always been fascinated by what kind of paint they've used on plastics since the 70s, the 60s. Who knows? It's been working. I mean, because you're thinking about it, this stuff isn't scraping off unless you really dig at it in most cases. But yeah, that's what I've always heard, is that it's extremely toxic in its liquid form, but as soon as it dries, it's safe.
I would assume you couldn't even get it in the U.S.
More than likely not, and that's why I think a lot of people got to understand that. That's why all the toy manufacturing has been done overseas, and that's why you only have like a lot of toy makers over here that are either doing it out of their homes, or they're like doing stuff with wood, or something along those lines, where we're not using as much volatile type items.
Now this one here, where did you get the Daft Punk heads?
Oh, so there was a is it Figure Arts, I think. They came out with
figures, yeah.
Yeah, they came out with Daft Punk figures that were kind of like in the 6-inch scale, like Figma, essentially.
Okay.
And so it was a 6-inch scale Daft Punk heads, or full bodies. So I took the heads and I kind of used putty to kind of fill in any gap areas around their helmets or anything, like the neck and all. And then what I did was I made a mold of it, and it progressively shrunk the molds down until they got close to like 1/18 scale. So the trick is using mineral spirits in your latex when you're mixing it up, your mold star or whatever it might be. So it's basically taking an extra part of well, no, it's actually half. So what much that you're making of the silicone for that head, if it's a Dixie cup, whatever it might be size wise, then you're going to use a Dixie cup of mineral spirits also, mix it all together, and then you're going to pour it like you normally do. It's going to be extremely liquidy, and it's going to take like probably 2 days to cure, maybe 3 days. But if you gently remove it when it does cure, then you have a very delicate mold. And what's going to happen if you give it enough time, usually about a week or so, that the mold will actually evaporate all the mineral spirits, and the whole mold itself will actually shrink down little by little by little, like maybe
Oh, wow.
17%, 17% thereabouts. But if you keep doing it, so you have that shrunken mold, you make a casting, take that casting out, make a mold of it with the mineral spirits. You keep doing it again and it just it's the worst experience ever trying to get these things. They'll get misshapen because the molds get, they start they start doing different things because they're shrinking not in a controlled manner. I don't use like a pressure pot, so I just do everything air cure for everything.
Yeah,
And,
I think they might actually make specific mold material for
they
shrinking
do,
and expanding.
I didn't feel like buying it, so I went with the mineral spirit version because I heard that you could do it. So it was just basically a test. And yes, you are very correct. They do make a special a mix of, and I think Smooth On has it, that they make it, and it does shrink for you, for that. But then you can also reverse it and actually enlarge molds by doing the exact same thing, except you make the mold and then you put it into like a jar of mineral spirits, and it actually absorbs the mineral spirits. So then you have an enlarged mold that you can make a casting of and go in the opposite direction and just keep making a mold, enlarge it, make a mold, enlarge it. So you could essentially, for the most part, make a life-size action figure if you had the time and enough material, and you could actually
5 years of time,
keep. Exactly. Yeah. So some of the detail might be missing, but you could technically do that theoretically. Yeah.
Well, yeah. The reason I had asked is there's a couple heads that I've had from stuff, and I mean they were actually like a custom head that didn't come on an action figure. So like I bought this one and I thought, wow, this seems kind of oversized. And then there was another head cast I got from someone and I'm like, well, this seems undersized. And because sometimes they make the head undersized if they want to have a helmet fit on it and it look right with the helmet on. And then you don't have a helmet and the person has an itty bitty head like a transformer. The other question I had in this photo, because I've seen it in a bunch of the others, are you using shoestrings for this
for the
cabling?
Cables. Yeah, paracord.
That looks really good.
Yeah, because I discovered that, like, God, I don't know, it's been probably 20 years ago, and I would just dabble around with trying to add that element that it's those little things in the backgrounds of scenes that you don't realize that's there, but you need it to really set the mood. And like power cabling is something that I've always thought was the coolest element of like Blade Runner and the hallways on Hoth, all those things of just the power couplings and the bundles of cables, piping and all that kind of stuff. It just adds to that futurism.
Well, the great thing about the shoestrings is, one, they have the texture to it, which, just if you took some sort of wire, it wouldn't have it. And the other thing is because it's so loose, if you wanted to, pin it to a wall and actually have it draping, it's naturally going to drape. Whereas if you have, a wire or something, even if you gutted it,
like it's got some weight to it.
Yeah. And
that's what I use, because it naturally has a weight to it. It looks like something that they would either have fuel going through it or some sort of electrical conduit or whatever it might be. And it's something that it's not going to get in the way if you have a lot of it kind of draped around like a play set. if you don't like stiffen up the string, then you can kind of like just lift it up out of the way to get a shot, or to like get your arm in there to, you know, play with the figure or whatever you want to do. So that's a good thing about it, is that it's not something that could just snap off. And what I've done is actually made them before so that they had like two, like maybe like snap in ends on the power cable. So that way you can kind of remove it if you needed to. You know, you just pop it into this slot, pop it into the other slot, and then you have an optional dangling power cable from building to building.
Now this, I think, is
this is the more
this
recent
is
one I saw.
just absolutely beautiful.
Oh yeah,
I love this.
You know, my newest shot today, I used the same dinosaur because my wife had just gotten me the newest Jurassic World big dino that they had for this year, and she said, "Hey, the Target's got them. I'll pick that one up for you. You said you wanted to make something out of it," so she picked it up, and I haven't opened it up yet, but he's supposed to be longer than that one, but not as tall. But that was a fluke. I mean, when I first built that dinosaur, I in my mind, Rocket Station's in the center of a hollowed out asteroid, you know, and you get to the center of it through like tunnels, a whole webwork of tunnels. So I imagined that if it's in this cavern, that there's maybe some sort of mindless drone of a giant dinosaur that's its head's been removed and replaced with like a cockpit, you know, a piloted, you know, cockpit at the end of it, control station or something. And it's basically just like a cybernetic drone, organism that just kind of tromps around.
Does he have like a fake leg in the back?
Yeah, he's got a AT-AT foot.
Okay, yeah.
On his front leg.
That is
and
awesome.
Then one of the back ones is to make it to look like he's got like just this big tromping, you know, boot type thing.
This was just I love this. I absolutely love this.
Because a lot of people ask me, like, well, if they hadn't seen my stuff before, what does it kind of look like? And I usually say, if you take Star Wars and Blade Runner and Mad Max and blend it all up, that's essentially kind of the vibe I'm kind of going for with stuff. I didn't want to turn it into anything Star Warsy and nothing that was going to be something else. I wanted it to look like Rocket Station, so that's why it's just got elements of all kinds of things stuck to it.
Yeah, it kind of could be its own universe, you know, definitely.
Dino Riders or Dino Saucers. Remember that from the 80s?
Yeah, well, Dinotopia. I always thought
that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah,
books. Yeah, the artwork was amazing in it, and I think it was. I started looking at a lot more concept art of just random whatever the artist comes up with, of just large beastly creatures that are just dangling with power cables and replaced parts and swapped out bits, and they've got things attached to them that they're just workhorses, you know. And I just thought that element was really cool, you know, to be able to see if I could make something using an existing off the shelf, you know, toy.
Man,
and all the armor plating, all that armor plating is just I just clipped pieces out of like a $12 plastic tote from Walmart. so I mean, yeah, a lot of times it's like I don't know what I'm going to do to it. I need to cover some of the body because I'm not going to like wrap this whole thing in like just like where it looks like I'm just gluing on, you know, mechanical bits. I want it to look like, you know, he's maybe built for battle or for things to fall on him or something. You know, he looks like he's been used for something. So I figured maybe I could cover him in some sort of chainmail or plating, and then I figured like, well, I need something plasticky. I don't want to deal with things like metal edges or, you know, all that. So then I looked around and I found a silver colored tote like from Walmart for like $8, something like that, and I just cut out the shapes and dremeled them to kind of put some notches in them, and then I used a pop rivet, you know, rivet gun, and just use pop rivets on it to lock it in place, because the great thing about it, the whole thing is hollow. So with pop rivets, it works really well when it goes through the surface of the skin. It's in a hollow chamber that it mushrooms out, and then that armor plating for that one piece is locked in, you know, at two corners, you know, so that way it kind of flares out if need be toward the bottom.
It's a great.
Yeah, that is just a work of art. I love it.
That I agree. Well, also, is it the Weyland-Yutani symbol in the middle of it?
Yep.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah. Oh, nice.
Yeah. Because in my mind with Rock Gut, it's like a smuggler's trade of people that are flying around through all the different universes. So that I always explain it like that's maybe the reason why they hide Han Solo and Carbonite on almost every episode of Firefly, and why the Twilight Avenger or whatever the Star Wars ship is, you see that in a scene in Firefly, and you see Firefly in a scene from Battlestar Galactica, and then like the Star Trek, the one of the Abrams Star Treks, you see R2-D2 in the space debris. The 2001 EVA pod that's in the Watto's junkyard. There's a weird. I totally get that it's a nod toward all these other movies, and I get the Easter egg. But if you wanted to, you could say that there is a smuggling trade that's slipping into these different universes, and they're basically swapping parts back and forth and coming up with these, Frankenships that are like Spaceballs and Ferengi and you name it. It's just all, a hodgepodge.
Look at that Imperial Hiss tank is all. Hey, now I'm gonna just do it a quick aside. I came across this is now the second time I've seen an Imperial Hiss tank in the last year and a half. I had one I bought from a lot of Joe's that I bought about 8 months ago, and on the side of it he had put IG-88 as his ship on it. It was it was glorious.
That's cool. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, man, Chris. So earlier you were talking about going to the tabletop crafting like pages and seeing all their like the terrain that are like downscaled for the 1-inch figurines. Like what inspirational or what other crafters inspire you to create your not only your photography but like your terrain and scenes and stuff? Is there anything specific you have in mind?
Oh, I mean, and honestly, I can say for years, I've loved seeing the stuff by Hole in the Ground. I remember stumbling across you probably years ago, and I was like, "This is amazing that there's." And I could tell you were a collector because the amount of detail in the items. So seeing his stuff, your stuff was that it's available, that people are making this stuff on their own to keep propelling the fandom with the toy buying. And so I can definitely say Hole in the Ground was one of those that, in the very beginning when I was first starting out, like trying to check out who's making toys that are independent toy makers. And I saw them and I'm like, hell yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And
Nice.
and like Marauders, the Marauders Inc., the Gun Runners, I love that they've created a toy line where you can buy this stuff a la carte. If you need 47 left-handed holsters, boom, they can hook you up with that and you name it, it's like parts and pieces. The little tiny mics that pop into a helmet, boom, they've got them. Or the rifles of the head. If you just need 39 headless troops that you're going to replace them with Rhodian heads or something, then you could do that. And so it's cool that nobody's really necessarily stepping on anybody's toes, but everybody kind of provides a little something for everybody, whatever direction of fandom that they want to go with. And but I mean, with it, like the toy makers that I'm seeing, honestly, a lot of stuff I've seen is just like through Google Images. I would just do a search for like sci-fi generators or sci-fi crates and see, what and a lot of thing is sometimes you'll find these props and you have to do a double take because you think that they're 3D printed, but they're actually for like CG art to be used in a game or for digital, a digital image, CGI that they're making. So you can purchase that graphic, for that code for that item to be able to place it in your video game or your picture or whatever it might be. So it's kind of cool to see the actual tangible items that are made by the 3D printer guys. And then you got guys that are doing the resin casting, pretty much like what I do. And then you got the guys that are just doing the CG elements of it. So if you kind of scan across the horizon at seeing all these different elements, that's why I'm able to kind of pull elements from the different ones. I like the CG guys. I like the hatch on this kind of container. Maybe I can reshape it and put it with this kind of trunk, or attach it to this kind of wall mount. You just kind of pick and choose.
I got you.
Now, Went ahead. Was this a real tire that you
Oh,
used for this?
that was actually a guy had created those. It was a project he was doing. As far as I know, he only came out with the one vehicle, like the monowheel type thing. And he knew about me, and he said, "Hey, I'm working on this," and he showed me like the preliminary designs for like several months. And I kept encouraging him. I was like, "I think it's great. The design was really cool." And it's as far as I can tell, it's 3D printed, and it's because it's pretty lightweight and it's fragile, but I mean the detailing is amazing on it. And he said, "I'm going to send you one, and you just do your thing with it. Just have fun with it." And I think he sent it to me, and it was just plain white, straight out the printer. So I cleaned it up and I assembled it, and then I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm thinking about doing something, kind of making it junky, but at the same time, I don't want to hide, because he's wanting to kind of promote, the vehicle. So I didn't want to hide it too much with stuff. So I figured, what if I just do a nice imperial gray repaint and weather it and make it look like it's something in the reserve line of the imperial might, and maybe it's only used on one planet for some various reason. So I
I've
just did
always loved
repaint.
univeel vehicles.
Yeah.
That's just always been something I kind of dug. Now, this figure, I saw a ton. I saw him popping up everywhere, and I'm assuming you had like one of those companies where they like scan your face and make like a head sculpt of you. Is that where
No,
you got the
actually,
head from?
no, actually, that it's from Acid Rain. And if you go on Acid Rain, one of the very first figures that they had come out with was a guy named Bob. So Bob was like the sort of grizzled veteran. It was a guy with white hair on his head and a white beard. And he always had that kind of very sour, forlorn look about him, where he's seen some shit, man. He kind of had that look, always squinting, dreary and weary kind of look. And I loved the figure. I loved the character. And, I had a white beard, and I realized, I was like, well, this Bob figure has a white beard, but I'm bald and I don't have white hair. So maybe what if I took the figure and I just shaved the white hair off of the actual plastic of the figure and make it a bald, character like me. And so then that's what I did. And I was like, well, I actually shaped the head to look like the shape of my head, and it worked out pretty well.
I was
And then
gonna say it looks amazing.
yeah, it looked pretty good, because I kind of always have a squint when because I'm always thinking about something that I'm going to tear apart and reassemble. And I realized my actual beard was getting longer, and my figure's beard was, still the normal length. So I ended up sculpting over with like epoxy sculpt, I think it is. And I resculpted a beard that's fuller, a little bit, longer, but it still allows his head to, be able to articulate around.
Yeah,
Nice.
I kept seeing it show up, and I'm like, oh, I see what it is.
Yeah,
That's your cameo throughout everything.
So it's a character of myself that I wanted living on the station. And a lot of people think that I make the guy like the king of the station and he owns it and all that. I'm like, no, man, he's just like a dude just trying to get by in the city. There's he still steps in dog shit on the way to work, or he's his freighter ship is broke down or something. He's constantly looking for a break. But I mean, and to me, that's what makes a cool like toy character, is something that you can kind of put elements of whatever you want to without being like the Superman where he's always winning. It just makes it more fun to kind of have the guy get beat down.
Speaking of Rot Gut, and you're adding onto it, and I was gonna ask you, like, so if you had a chance to get one item, a Grail item for Rot Gut, to add it to it, something that you might want to customize with, because like how you did the barge, you turned it into like the Rot Gut station version of the barge,
right?
If there was one Grail item you could add to the Rot Gut, what would it be?
Oh. God, I don't know. That exists or has existed, but I never got it.
Yeah, it can be something long discontinued.
Let me think. I got the space 1999 Eagle. That was a Grail item that I found 25 years ago at a toy show.
Wow.
I got that. And then the barge, and then the Enterprise, the big ships. Amazingly, I've never wanted like the USS Flag. I liked it, as a kid for what it was, and I thought it was like the most amazing masterpiece a toy company could ever make. But it's like an aircraft carrier didn't do it for me, unless it was like the SDF-1, like Robotech type aircraft carrier. If they did something like that, that would be cool. But I never wanted the flag.
Do something small too, like maybe like a certain mini rig or something that was real hard to get a hold of. Like,
yeah, there's a few mini rigs that I never got that I thought was really cool. What's the what's the one that they had from the Droids line of the mini rigs, and it had the Kezai, no, not Kezai Band. He was the goofy guy that was in it. It had From, like Sid, was it Sid From that was in the cockpit, and they were flying around.
not the side gunner, was it?
It might be the side gunner. I don't know.
That's what I'm thinking of from Droids.
Yeah, and then no, you know what? The what is it? The ATL Interceptor, is that the one that has like the drop down kind of pod arms that are on it? I thought that was pretty cool.
Yep.
I never got one of those. Those are hard to find anyway, regardless. Yeah. But no, I've God, I don't know if there was one thing that because anymore, it's like I almost just make whatever ship that if I want a cruiser, I want it to be big enough to actually park a ship inside of it, so I'll just make my own type cruiser, or I use parts and pieces. So a lot of times if there was a grail item, I know I would end up buying it and tearing it apart. So it's easier for me to look on eBay for like junk parts that that way I don't feel so bad, busting up. Because I mean, I've always been an opener, but there are toys that I have that I'm like, I don't really want to tear this one apart. Like even the Playmobil Enterprise, I got it and I really love it, and I'm itching to like just make it as janky as possible and just make it spray painted and tagged and beat up and put wings on it or something. I don't know, but it's like at the same time I really like it as is. I don't know.
That's how I feel about some figures. I used to
same thing, yeah.
Hold on to a lot of vintage collection figures because of the extra articulation, and then I see how much they're going for even loose on eBay, and I'm thinking, yeah, you know what? I'd rather sell it and use that money for something else.
Yeah, and
rather than rip the arms off.
And I never resell any of my toys. So whenever I get toys in, even if it's toys that people give me, I've never wanted to get rid of any of them, because I know that there's going to be that one piece, that part that I need, or a character that this figure would be the perfect base of it. And I don't know what it is. That's the magic of it, when you have like oodles of these toy boxes, and you know that there's a secret part in each one of those boxes that will make something amazing. And you don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. And I just want to see what happens. It's just fun. I can honestly say I haven't been bored in like 10 years, because I've always had something to do, either the building, the painting, the designing of the signs, just kind of doing research for a storyline. When I did the oil refinery, the fuel refinery, I did a ton of research on oil refineries, like offshore type refineries. I didn't realize that there was a varied amount. I didn't realize that some float, some are anchored. I didn't know any of that, and I just thought it was amazing. So I watched all these oil refinery movies. There was one weird one that was like, I think it was from the Netherlands or something. Outpost 13 or something like that. Outpost 7. It's cool to watch these things, even though I'm not going to directly copy like that. Like I have to have this control shack, and I have to have this output pipe, and I didn't bother with any of that. I just wanted to get the vibe of the scene, the setting. Like, what can I get away with in a small area that it can be like a gas station and an oil refinery at the same time. And I couldn't cover it with like walkways or catwalks all over the place, because then it's going to start getting a little too convoluted. I could always add them later on, but at the same time, you don't want to make it so that it's going to be a struggle to play with or to disassemble. If, like I did recently, I went to the Soda City Comic-Con at Columbia, South Carolina, and I brought that with me, the hog leg station, and it actually breaks down pretty quickly. I mean, I can have it broken down in like 10 minutes, where it all confines into the main base box of it. But
Is
but
it this
still,
one that was on like a rolling cart
yeah,
with the
that's it.
crane?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's Hogleg. Yep. So I always wanted like a sister station to Rotgut, but Rotgut didn't really have any more actual like flat space for me to add anything big to it. So I figured, what if I had something that's sort of like an offshore gas station for big ships to go to, fuel up. It's safe because it's away from the station, but it's on a rolling cart, so I can actually rotate it around the city. Maybe it has to reposition itself. Maybe it mines for something inside the asteroid or something. Once you kind of start coming up with a storyline for like a city when you're making it, you realize all the ideas that are actually just kind of lurking around the corner when you add one little extra thing and it leads to this, this, and this. You never know.
Now that room you have in seems awfully empty. What do you do with the rest of that room? Is that area where you can expand, or do you also use it as your office or something else?
It's basically just the playroom. So I mean, it's about 24 by 8, like I'd say about 24 by 18 wide.
Wow,
And yeah, so I mean, it's decent sized. I mean,
that's
it's the size
enormous.
of like a, yeah, it's pretty big because what it is a what they call a frog, so it's a finished room over garage. And I
Uh-huh.
actually I just found that out at the Comic-Con when people kept looking at the pictures of it and they said, oh, it's your frog. And I didn't know what I've been in the build, I've been in home building for, I don't know how many decades, and I don't remember ever hearing anybody refer to it as a frog.
I
So
haven't.
it might be a regional thing. I don't know, but it was South Carolina. So, but yeah, it's basically my garage workshop is directly underneath it. So we had this finished room that's actually flush with the rest of the second floor. So I mean, I go through that that one doorway, and then I'm on the balcony, or the hallway to my kids' bedrooms and the balcony and all that. So it's not like it's a separate area. It's all part of the the house.
Yeah, part of the problem I have is my wife and I live in a split level, and like a lot
Mm-hmm.
of split levels, they'll have like a really big, family room or whatever downstairs, and that's where my
Right.
collection is. The problem with that is like I could never do something like you have with Rotgut Station unless it was
Mm-hmm.
enclosed in a box because we have cats.
I've got
And I
5.
know that figures would get missing. I would go in, and
Oh
in the
yeah.
middle would be a cat sleeping, and
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
that's the downside.
I've got 5 cats, indoor cats, and at one time we had 7. We had 7 indoor cats, and amazingly, they really didn't mess with anything about Rocket Station. Um, I think they were more like I would find them sleeping on it, and I think they were more relaxed with the lighting. I think the lighting had a lot to the mood of it. So I guess in many ways, what I was trying to do with the lighting was like give it life, the city. But the cats loved it, that they thought it was great too, and they didn't really chew on anything. So that I looked out, and even with figures, I was always, or at least tried to be pretty good. Um, to keep the figures kind of contained. But I mean, I'm not one of those guys that puts them, and I do have like some tackle boxes where everything is compartmentalized and you put each individual figure into its own little cubby. But I mean, mostly I just have regular bins that I just throw a bunch of figures in. I'm hoping I can find that figure again the next time I need that figure for a shot. I never know. But yeah, all my stuff is all mushed together for the most part.
Yeah, I know if our one cat, she is a thief, and I know that figures and stuff would end up going missing
Yeah.
if she had. So unfortunately, like all the cabinets I have, everything has to be like in curio cabinets behind glass or something like that, and so it kind of limits anything. Like the biggest cabinet I have is maybe like 20 inches deep. So if I were to
Right.
make something that would fit in that cabinet, I'm kind of limited on my size and everything. But
Well, and that's the thing is like not everybody has the ability to have like what I call an island playset that is sitting on a platform that gives you 360 degrees of play or accessibility, for photography or whatever it might be. It is something that you kind of have to know ahead of time what it is you want, because I mean, I hear there's some days I'll have like a really nice shot and I don't even realize it, but people they attach to one particular element of a shot that I wasn't expecting, like the dinosaur ones. Usually when I do photography, I notice that if I put like kind of random no-name figures, of course people aren't really gonna connect to it because they don't know who the figure is or the character. It's made up. But of course, if you do the big names like Spider-Man, Superman, Star Wars, Darth Vader, anything like that, you're going to get a lot more attention, toward it. So that's why when I do the stuff with the dinosaur, it kind of surprises me because it doesn't jive with anything. It's its own, creation. But I guess people haven't seen anything like it before, and they jump on it. They're focused, more into it. So a lot of times people, I would get like 200 messages like bombarding me in a day. Hey, I want to build something like this and this and this. And they tell me about whatever scene setting they want. But here again, they don't realize how big something like what they're wanting is actually going to be. And Hoth comes up a lot. Like everybody loves Hoth. But the downside to it is that it's all white for the most part, the base of it. Whatever you do, to replicate Hoth, it is going to be all snow, all ice kind of a thing. You can add elements of blue to it and different, dingy, dirtying effects, weathering and all that. But it is a playset that's going to be inherently an all white playset. So will that work for your environment? And plus people want to have it where the Falcon sits inside of it in the docking bay, the launch bay. And they want to be able to have like three AT-ATs on it, and I'm like, okay, take all those things you want and actually space them out to see how big whatever you want to make is going to be. I'm never going to say that it can't be done. It's just that you really have to use the actual toys as a placeholder to kind of realize, oh, I don't quite have the room to be able to have a convoy of AT-ATs or chicken walkers or whatever it might be. The stuff takes up room. It really, really does. So it's a balancing act with it. With designing any of it, it's like you want to have a city, but you want to have it so that the figures can fit inside the buildings, and then they have room to actually intermingle. Like they can sit down at the bar or go to a table or climb up these stairs to get to this area. So I mean, it's like imagine designing something inside and out, and then add about 15 more things around it that's interlinked with it. So it shocks me that I designed it the way I did with Rockgut, considering that I didn't know what the next building was going to look like or how it was going to interact with everything else surrounding it.
Well, I think the thing is you have a certain style, like I said, that you can kind of see it and it's your work, or at least inspired by your work. So even if the buildings are different, they still look like they belong in the same universe. It doesn't look like you took a building from Star Wars and put it next to a building from Star Trek. Their architectural style is definitely different. It looks like, the same person designed building 1 as designed building 2 within the city.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
Chris, let's say, let's jump ahead to like, if in a few years down the road, what do you see for Rocket Station? Like, what do you think about adding on to it?
You were asking about adding. Let me see, additions. One thing I've always thought of would be cool, and I've never like pursued it, but I've always imagined what I would add would be to have probably like some sort of environmental, like kind of an ambient track, an audio track of city sounds. Something where it sounds like muttering. I'll probably have to take the audio and if you get on YouTube and look around, you can find all kinds of ambient sounds of like a diner, of an airport, the terminal, the concourse, whatever you name it. You can find elements, and it's going to be layering on with space station sounds, with like jibber jabber, where it's just incoherent babbling of something. You might have to speed it up to make it sound alien or slow it down. So, I mean, I could do it, and I've kind of done it before with stuff, but I would love to have like maybe a 10-minute looped track of just muttering. It just makes it sound alive, and that would be a cool element to add I just plug it in, and it's just something that runs. And I guess I could technically do it just with playing the file like on my phone, like on Bluetooth, and just playing it through like a Bluetooth speaker that's underneath the station.
Yeah,
Well,
that
okay,
is certainly not an answer I thought we would get. But I like the thought. I like the thought process. Definitely thinking outside the box. Now, the
Okay.
one building, does it have? It looks like it has fungus growing on it.
Yeah, that's probably the newest thing that I wanted to add, and I always wanted to have an element. I've always been fascinated with like mushrooms and fungus and all that kind of stuff, and I thought it was really cool. And I noticed that I started looking at. I realized that you ever heard of a cottage core? It's kind of a whole new thing. People are kind of getting all into like the whole Little House on the Prairie, sundresses and bonnets and like living like it's like Little House on the Prairie. It's just a whole new fashion trend, I think, a whole aesthetic. So doing a search online, I was just fascinated by it. I thought it was neat. There's actually movies that fit within that genre. So if you want to watch, certain like space operas, then like Star Wars would fit with that. Firefly, that kind of thing. Well, there's whole movies, a whole genre of movies that fit within like cottagecore. And then more you get into cottagecore, then you come across like dark cottagecore or goblin core or witch core. So they're all very varying aesthetic elements. But it's like you could walk into a room and see like this girl has like a kind of a hippie chick, sort of appeal to it, and it's all greenery. Where this girl is more into like the Harry Potter type, spells and knickknacks and dark cat stuff and like things that are rotten. And the more I started looking into it, I started seeing more of like fungicore, where it's like fungus type related things. And you have stuff like the Smurfs. They technically kind of fall within that, where it's more fantastical. They live in mushrooms. And then a lot of like Arietti, anime. You starting to look at some of the stuff that I grew up with the animes and looking, and you see a lot of, and I was always fascinated with like the miniature civilization type cartoons. So like there was that cartoon The Littles that came on in the 80s, and it
I
was
love
little
the
people
Littles.
yeah, I love The Littles. And if you love The Littles, then you'll probably like Arietti is one of them. The Secret Life of Arietti, I think is what it is. And
I've heard of it. Yeah.
yeah, it's great. It's one of those. It's kind of a sleepy one, but it's beautiful the way it's shot, and it inspires me, even though they're just living with like little pin needles, and they have like matchsticks and stuff like that. It's not sci-fi, but if you took something along those lines and kind of incorporated it into this scale, then you kind of get the feel for it, and giving something that's very urban and gritty a little bit of life, like even though it's something that's decaying, on it. I love that whole aesthetic of it. So that was something that was easy for me to add to the station to give it a little bit more of that grit and grime, that there's things now living on this spaceport. And I figured the best way to do it with mushrooms, instead of me sitting there trying to sculpt mushrooms, was just go outside and find some. So I just found some mushrooms and poured the silicone over them, and then made molds, of actual mushrooms.
Oh my
different
gosh.
sizes,
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, I
held
just
up.
thought you sculpted them. That's awesome.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
those
nice.
those are actual mushrooms, and I did the trick with the mineral spirits. If I found like a tiny little mushroom, I can make a small little mold of it and then enlarge it, and now it's like twice its size, and I can get it as big as I want. So any little flat areas around the station, even if it's just like a few inches wide, I can either stick one of these atomic air conditioners to it, or I can now stick some of these shelf bracket mushrooms to it, so it looks like they're growing off of whatever is floating around the city. And plus it adds to it can add to the lore of the city, that the city actually functions by harvesting these mushrooms for either narcotics or medicine or fuel, or it could be like Tabana gas. The station is self-sustaining, so it does, it's got customers at all ends of the universe.
As I was going to ask you, like, if you ever decided to like put any kind of fauna in it, I guess the mushrooms kind of fall under that,
Yeah,
technically. So
the fauna was one thing. Well, I did put some of the glow in the dark aquarium plants and
I saw that, like the
and
sea
coral.
anemones
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah, the sea anemones, and I grabbed a few of those on Amazon. I bought a bundle, like $100 worth of these aquarium things that should work pretty well. And if they were a weird color, I just dyed them in that RIT dye more. You can get it at Walmart, but it works for synthetic things, and you can actually dye the silicone that the coral was made in. So it was kind of cool that I could kind of make it a little dingier if it was a little too bright. But they glow in the dark, so it's kind of neat, with that.
So, Chris, you had mentioned you were at what was the convention you said it was at in South
It's
Carolina?
the Soda City Comic Con.
Soda City?
Yeah, Soda. I was born in Columbia, South Carolina, and I don't think I ever had heard anybody refer to it as Soda City, but I had to look it up. All right, so this is this is the internet origin of it. They call Columbia Soda City because one of the early abbreviations for Columbia was COLA, cola. So I guess, if this is true, that it was kind of nicknamed the Soda City because it was cola. So,
Huh.
yeah, I've spent the majority of my childhood summers in Columbia or in the outskirts, and I don't think I ever remembered hearing anybody refer to it as Soda City, but it's actually a thing. So that when I went down there and saw that there was other things named, so the Soda City, this or that or whatever it might be. So that's like kind of the nickname of the city that I did not know
So
about.
now, is that the first convention you did where you were vending as Empire Toy Works?
Actually, this one I didn't sell anything at it. I didn't think I was going to have enough time to like make a ton of things just in case it really went well. And then they wanted to, and see, I didn't know anything about the going to a different state and having to get a business license, for that state. Because I'm guessing you probably deal with this, right? Don't you go to multiple states for shows?
Yeah, usually what they do, and a lot of times it's actually handled through the convention that you're at. They'll issue you it's like a temporary tax license. So while you're there in that state, you're actually collecting sales tax for that state that then you have to send them.
Okay. Yeah, because when I talked to the other vendors there that they are from the area, they were mentioning, you have to apply for like the actual state's, tax license, and then you're going to have to file, like, even if it's zero, every month at the same time. You got to go to the site's, tax site and all that. I didn't feel like dealing with that this time.
Yeah,
so I just
we've never had to do that
promote.
one out of state. It was always we were issued like the temporary one that was just for
Okay.
it only lasts like a week or anything. I've never had anyone
Yeah.
tell me, oh, like this is something you have to continually do.
Gotcha. Okay.
Are you planning on doing any more? Specifically, one I was wondering, because it's kind of in that neck of the woods. Are you going to do? I forget what's called, the ICCCCCC con or whatever. It's
the Imperial Commissary Con in Nashville.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think I know about that one. I don't think I've heard of that.
Well, I didn't until I knew of the Imperial Commissary. I hadn't heard of the convention until earlier this year. Someone had told me about it, and they said, "Oh, have you ever considered going to this convention? It's pretty cool. You might do okay." And so my wife and I are going to be doing that next April. It's actually, for the size, we've done conventions that probably had 3 to 4 times the attendance numbers, and it cost us less for the booth. So it's a little on the pricey side, and the sales tax down there is 9.25%.
Okay.
It's pretty salty, but which of course, the customers, that would be passed on to them, but still.
Yeah.
So we're kind of taking a risk on it, but where it might pay off is because the people going to that are going to be a little bit more heavily Star Wars focused, and they're going to be a little
Right.
bit heavier action figure focused. So
Right. Gotcha.
it's going to be a bit of a gamble. And normally, if we do it, I don't know if you're aware, if you've ever been to our website. The start I got was actually, I got my start in prop making. And
okay, that's right. Yeah.
so for a good number of years, that was all I made, and it wasn't until I started hearing complaints by people they're like, well, why doesn't Hasbro make like cantina chairs or the droid torture rack or some of this stuff? And I basically said, well, wait a minute, I'm a prop maker.
Right.
These are basically props. They're just small props.
They're small. That's all they are. Yeah, small props.
Yeah. So I have two sides of the business, and generally, for example, there's an anime convention we do every year. I don't take diorama stuff to that because, I'm probably not going to really sell any. I take all the props.
Right.
But if I went
which one is it? The Nekocon or
Katsucon?
Okay, I actually, my wife and I actually went to the very first and second, and probably the third and fifth or so, Katsucon, because they originally had it in Virginia Beach.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it was at the So
it's always been at the same. It's always been at the same place when we go. But
is that the big DC location?
The Gaylord Convention Center?
Yeah, I think it's that place
in National Harbor.
Yeah,
we've been going there for a real long time, and it's always been there. And so for something like that, I take the props too. And then I've done a couple smaller toy shows that have been more local and taken the diorama stuff to that. And surprisingly, we don't do all that well because even at a lot of those shows, you get people that they're there to buy, action figures or toys. And so what we're hitting, and I think even me more so than you, because you're offering finished stuff, not kits.
Right.
So it's like for me, with that kind of stuff, I'm really hitting a niche audience. I'm hitting, they got to be a Star Wars action figure collector who also doesn't mind model kit building.
Right.
So
and see that's why I try to encourage people to think if they've had any kind of history with role-playing games, tabletop games, that they ought to be used to essentially doing the exact same thing where you purchase the figurines, you do something with them, paint them or customize them or use them if they're straight out of the pack, good to go. But you buy accessories to expand this environment, this adventure. And I wish that somebody would love, and I would probably love to be a part of it. If somebody was to try to come out with a role-playing game, and I honestly didn't play that many role-playing games, but I had a ton of the source books from a ton of the different games because I loved the artwork and I loved reading about the stats and just the histories, all the text work that they had put into these source books and the galaxy guides and the adventure journals and all that kind of stuff, especially with the Star Wars ones. And I would love to see if somebody were to come out either for one of these intellectual properties like Star Wars or Star Trek or G.I. Joe or pretty much anything, if it was left generic, where you could use toys as your people, your markers, your characters and ships and things of that nature. And if there was a way that it could be game for one division and toys for another division, that would be an amazing thing where you could actually kit out your ship with pop on pieces, a shield generator or a cannon or thrusters or whatever it might be, cargo pods. I think an element like that would be something very, very cool for the guys that are still collecting, that still, if they got time with family and everything, work, that they can still fit in a game, but they can actually carry their toys around, maybe in their Chewbacca, bandolier. I had like several of those, and I had one that was sealed up and opened it up, and all the foam had deteriorated on, inside of it. But yeah, I just think that that's so cool. If it would be so cool if somebody were to develop something along those lines where you could not necessarily buy what they're hawking, but you can actually use, Leatherneck from G.I. Joe and this guy over here from, Metal Men, or Sergeant Rock or whatever. There's a way to make it all jive together. And that's one thing that, even though I had already built Rock Gut and it was essentially already 90%, at this completion where it's at now, was I listened to the audiobook for Ready Player One. And the movie was getting ready to come out at the time, and like several months away. And I was like, let me, listen to this book. And that's usually what I do when I'm working on stuff, is I'll listen to audiobooks and stuff, or music. And I loved, if you read the book, there's so many more elements of the different worlds that they're picking little bits and pieces from all these different worlds. So, like the main character having Han Solo's gun belt with the Thundercats belt buckle, and all these little add-on pieces that he had like at his disposal, with having, the Serenity from Firefly, and he's got a Millennium Falcon, and he's got Luke's X-Wing, ready to go. So if there's a mission he needs to go on, he can go to his moon base, get the ship he needs, and go off and do that quest or whatever. And I think it would be kind of cool if there was some sort of role-playing type game that allows you to bring out your Galoob Ferengi fighter and this ambulance from this line, something that incorporates things that we all have in shelves or in boxes, that you could actually bring it back out again.
Yeah, I remember reading the Ready Player One book and then hearing they were going to do a movie. I'm like, how are they going to get the licensing to do this? There's no way they can do a straight up adaptation with.
Yeah, I know.
How much
Amazingly,
stuff.
for having Spawn and Iron Giant and Toho, Godzilla, with Toho and all that kind of stuff, Mecha Godzilla.
I'm a Gundam fan, so one thing they didn't have in the book was the character, I believe, turned into Ultraman in that battle. And in the movie, they had him turn into Gundam, and I'm like, I don't care, because I've been waiting forever for a live action Gundam, and Netflix is doing one. They're starting work on, so really excited about that.
That's one thing I love about a lot of these groups that I'm in, like on Facebook groups, and a lot of times I'm just reading to see the discussions, to see what people like and what do they like about. Especially when they get into a discussion where it's like, what ship is your favorite? For what reason? It could be the Falcon, the Serenity. It could be, a Nell from Battle Beyond the Stars, the booby ship. Any of those. And I love hearing what people like about these different environments or these different ships. And it's not a huge leap for people to say, I would love to have the Falcon in a Star Trek universe, and that's okay. You can like a ship from over here, but you like this environment for whatever reason. It's all personal for you. It's very subjective. Any fandom, especially with Star Wars, with what people like. Either they love the prequels or they hate the prequels, or the any of the trilogies. Everybody's got a certain connection to any certain thing or certain character. And I love hearing about that from different people, why they like things a certain way.
Yeah, you were what you were talking about was scratching me where I itch, man, with the old West End Games Star Wars books back in the day. Yes, we were heavy into that, and we, just like you said, we broke out our figures, and those were our avatars for the game. Even though
they were,
they
totally were.
Yeah, dude, we I guess the nearest thing I have to that now, because Western Game doesn't do them now. I think it's who does this? Is it Fantasy Flight that does them now, or somebody else that does the or anyway. Well, I had a D&D game last night, and we used Boss Fight, their fantasy line, for the same thing. When something drops in game, I can attach it right to my figure and check it out. And now it's a little different now. We're doing it through Zoom or through Discord, but you still can. It's still like I totally agree with you. An RPG game using your figures, I want to say Marauder tried it as a Kickstarter about
I've
3 years
I
ago.
always heard something about that they were trying to develop something with their figure line along those lines, and I don't know if it was rumor or not, but I just thought it was an amazing idea. And I know that Star Wars they currently have a pretty popular RPG now that what is it, the tabletop one, with the miniature figures, the smaller ones.
Not Marauder. Hold on, you asked me too fast. Not Fantasy Flight. Not X-Wing. Not crap.
But it is role playing with the tabletop miniatures with the terrain and all that. I can't remember what
I
line
thought they
it
got
is,
rid of
but I
that
see
a
it.
while ago because it was
No.
Star Wars miniatures.
You're thinking of Command, but no, they still have it. It's called I just saw it yesterday.
No, not Command. There was I think it was actually just called Star Wars miniatures, but it was
no, it has.
it's almost like HeroClix figures. They're real little.
Yeah, they're similar to that. But I mean, if you look online, you'll see a lot of guys that do 3D printing of those buildings, and but unfortunately they're only scaled for that size. But I mean, if you go bigger, then you can use your actual toy collection, as these figures, and get a bit more of a less a less locked in type scenario, because they are actually articulated where you could have a guy literally hanging off a ladder on top of a building waiting for somebody to shoot something at him, whatever the case may be. It just seems to kind of open up a few more abilities to actually lose your blaster, on the figure, making it very obvious this guy is, getting ready to fall over on something or hiding behind something.
I think what you guys are aiming at is you really want to come up with a way that us as grown adults have an excuse to quote unquote play with our toys, right?
Well,
Totally,
no,
yeah.
I play it all
But
the
I
time.
mean, I'll straight up admit I definitely play with this stuff, because I mean, why wouldn't I?
Exactly.
The main reason
Legion.
I built Rockgut was to have something to act when I feel like it. I have a diner that I can have my guy go into and get mad and blast the droid chef if he wants to. It's just great to have these. It's almost like having your own movie studio, with all these different little vignettes that you could just walk in and walk out of and have an actual adventure. And that's why I encourage so many people to at least try it, even if it's not a city. It's just maybe an outpost, just a wayward, off the beaten path gas station where it's only like one or two buildings and a pump, and that's it. And just have fun with the people that come through. With their stories, it's almost like an anthology, and there's so many talented guys that are either, or folks in general, just making, buildings or props or cloth goods. I've always loved cloth good figures, and there's guys out there that they're hand sewing, or they got their wives and kids that they learned how to sew, and they've got them as part of a family business, and they're making capes and cowls and all that kind of stuff. And I love it that it's pushing, the fandom even further.
Yeah, we were just talking about on Roll Scum. There's in the I think of the Lando Calrissian thread for the new VC they just came out with. They were talking about that exact subject came up. Those handmade coats, cowls, cloaks, and everything. Yeah, that was because they were thinking about maybe swapping Lando's out for another one. Star Wars Legion is what we were thinking of, man. Was the tabletop game?
That's it. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of great pieces in that line. Either the guys are making them or they're available through, the main line, I guess. But I love that kind of stuff.
Yes, when I make my own diorama, like I look at like Black Magic Craft or one of the tabletop crafting guilds pages on Facebook, and I know the dimensions and the math. I upscale it and try to use those as inspiration. Right. Yeah, and yeah, man, it like you said, it has that's an untapped market. I don't know, like I said, we talked about Marauder trying to learn it, but if it ever got off the ground, I could see that really being a separate niche just for the 1/18th scale alone.
The great thing is, with it, even if you don't actually play the game, like let's say you don't have anybody to actually play with, you can still collect the line. You can still, I'm sure there's going to be some sort of, textbooks that go along with it, or some sort of write-ups giving history about these pieces or whatever it might be. But it just seems like here's a way that somebody could have a gaming side of the company along with the actual production side of toys, props, whatever they might be, and they don't necessarily even have to be articulated, props or with bells and whistles and action features. They just sit there and they allow you to knock them over or pile them up as a barricade or whatever it might be.
Exactly.
I just think the possibilities are great to be able to tie it in with with companies that are actually making articulated figures, and this way nobody's really stepping on any toes because it's not necessarily licensed as Star Wars or Star Trek or whatever. It's just generic world that has a sci-fi lean or a little bit more military or fantasy or whatever it might be.
Generic world. That's what we all live in right now, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
We all live in generic world. Well, we've been going for 2 hours here, and I'm sure we could go for 2 hours more just geeking out over all this stuff.
Yeah.
Chris, so the one final thing I'll ask is what are you, not necessarily a holy grail or anything, but what are you looking forward to, if anything, that hasn't come out yet, whether it's an action figure? It can be from any line, an action figure, vehicle, or anything like that.
The newest, what I'm seeing coming out new from Acid Rain, I'm really digging. It's their Annex 2179 line, which is a little bit more cyberpunk, but it still fits within the Acid Rain world. And the characters that they are releasing with that, they look incredible. I mean, it's just, they're like robot assassins with brains and clear cased helmets, and I'm totally digging it. It's off the wall and it looks crazy, and I would love to see a movie.
Their stuff is so cool, but it's like I just can't bring myself to drop that much on a figure. The closest I came
I'll
to.
admit it's expensive. It's an expensive line, but once you get them, you feel how much more artist based it is. With the designs and what goes into how all the toys are made, essentially.
Yeah. Have you gotten any of the Joy Toy figures? They're kind of some of those are kind of along the same feel, and I have one of those and I was really impressed with it.
Yeah, I like those. I love the different lines that they're coming out with. I know that they're doing the Warhammer line, I believe, with the Marines. And I've had other figures like Devil's Toys is another one that was really cool. Very short-lived line. I'm not sure what happened to them, but I love their designs also. And it's
we lost him. He must have hit the button or something.
Yeah, I
don't. He must have. He was talking about Devil's. Like, I was hoping to talk to him about if he was he's tried to use any like chicken fried toys or what was the other one?
He might have, because one of his buildings, he had a photo of a building with like a cowboy in front of it or something.
There was or Planet Green Valley, those toys too.
Well, yeah, I saw he had at least one of those. Man, I would still love to get my hands on some of those.
I know. Hope he comes back.
Yeah, I'm actually going to message him.
Well, in this interim, while we're waiting for Chris to come back, why don't we tell all the listeners where they can find us at?
Yeah. Well, where they can find you at, about the only place they can find me is the website right now.
Yeah. Well, I'm on Facebook and as Rezakai, and I'm also on rebelscum.com. I try to stay off Twitter. It's become such a pit anymore. And God. I really hope we get to talk to him about well, I do want to he comes back too, but anyway, regarding, we haven't talked about what we've got recently yet, which well, I guess we can say that for a different segment for since we've already went over. I can't believe it was 2 hours already. It flew.
Yeah. Well, that's not as bad as I did a podcast last week with 3 other guys, and it was 3.5 hours. And although it felt like 3.5 hours.
Oh no.
Oh, here he is. Hey,
There he
Chris, we
is.
lost you
Hey.
somehow.
Yeah, everything's good.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure we lost you somehow.
Yeah, I think I don't know. It might have been my AirPods or something. I'm doing all this on my phone, so it might be a little screwy, but yeah, I think it's working okay.
Oh, okay. So anyway, yeah, we were actually just finishing up. I had that last question to ask you.
Okay, yeah, but no, that's pretty much the main thing. Is like the new Acid Rain stuff coming out, and then of course whatever Hasbro Star Wars type stuff. I'm always eager to see new things.
Well, I'm sure they'll have like another 5 variations of the Mandalorian, where it will be like, oh, here's him with the spear. Here's him with the spear with battle damage, without battle damage, removable helmet. I'm like,
well, they haven't done a muddy version yet. They haven't done, and which would be pretty cool if they did a Mudhorn kicked on doo-doo looking, Mandalorian with a.
They're doing it in 6-inch, but they're not.
They are doing it
in 6-inch, but they keep forgetting his boot knife. I keep trying to explain this to you. He doesn't kill the Mordhorn with any of his blaster weapons. He has to take out a boot knife and stab it in the face.
Yeah, the vibro blade. Yeah.
Yeah, and none of his figures have came with that yet. So that's something we didn't get into.
Well, that's what they'll do. They'll re-release a figure we already got, but that will be like an exclusive. You can only get this at Target, and it comes with the boot knife.
That's what the bunny one is coming with. It's a Target exclusive.
But I mean, that's the thing is, people love the character and they want to buy it, so they know what works, and that's why I think with Hasbro they are constantly going to zero in on the characters we know, and they're probably less likely to lean more towards those off the wall background characters that we really would love to see. But they're going to cover their bases, go with the safe option.
Yeah, agreed. It makes sense from a business standpoint too. So
I mean, personally, I would love them to make a figure of every single entity that existed on screen myself. But I totally get it that they have to limit themselves to certain things, and I guess whatever agreements they have with certain characters, licenses, I don't know. I'm not sure about what the inner workings are with something like that.
All right, Chris. Well, where can people find you?
You still hear me?
Yeah, we're here.
Okay, good. You can find me on Empire Toy Works on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and eBay.
Yeah, and you actually have a website too for it, right?
Yeah, I do have a web page. I haven't actually done anything with it in like 4 years. So I basically just do everything on Facebook and Instagram. It's just quicker to do daily updates on that.
Yeah, you had a ton of photos. I was going through them today trying to, pick out select ones for the stream, and I'm just scrolling through, and I'm like, man, I'm about ready to stop. I'm going and just collecting.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, it's great stuff, and absolutely love talking with you. This was
absolutely.
This was cool.
This was great.
Yeah, we'd love to have you back sometime, man. I'd love to get your opinion.
I would love to. I love the show, so it was definitely a pleasure to come on.
All right. Well, thank you so much. You have a good one.
Hey, you too. Thanks again.
Yep. Bye. So,
We're
that was
still
a good time,
by the way.
Yeah, we are still live.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, I wasn't cutting the stream.
Oh.
Yeah, we were just gonna give our peace outs or whatnot. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. Hopefully we'll be able to get Jake back on at some point. I just want to make sure that all the technical bugs are worked out and his connection works and everything. So for anyone listening, hope you enjoyed it, and we are planning on doing more interviews like this in the future. As we mentioned, we already did one, and due to a whole host of technical bugs and stuff, it just was unusable. If there's anyone else that you would like us to have on for an interview, please let us know in the comments or something like that. We have a list right now. Some people we're trying to get in touch with and try to get some stuff lined up. You have anything else to add, Matt?
I just want to say a shout out to Shiloh Camera, who's actually tuned in to watch us today. We haven't talked to Shiloh in about a year. Well, I talk to him on Facebook sometimes, but he's been one of our original co-hosts with Shiloh. Yeah, he was watching that. Other than us, want to say I hope looking forward to the craziness that is going to be this holiday season, and well, not looking forward to it. Looking forward to the aftermath and all the clearance sales for toys that we need. And I'm looking forward to more interviews. I hope we have Chris back. Maybe he can be a more semi-regular host with us because he seems to have a real good pulse on the 1/18 scale community. Yeah. So everybody, if you want to, like I said, give us a thumbs up on YouTube, and we'll try to be a little more regular with the show from now on.
Yeah, hopefully. So with that, we will see you all later.
Kessel Run Collecting is sponsored by Hole in the Ground Production, where you can find a broad range of do-it-yourself diorama kits for 3 3/4 and 6-inch scale action figures. Check them out now at holeinthegroundpro.com. Be sure to like and subscribe on Rumble. Kessel Run Collecting is not affiliated with Lucasfilm or Disney. All sounds and images are property of their respective copyright holder.